The static hissed through the patrol car at 3 in the morning, and then Duke's head snapped up in the back seat like something had punched him. His ears locked forward, his whole body went rigid, and a low whine climbed out of his throat that Officer Bradley Kessler had never heard in the 3 years they had worked together outside Bristow, Oklahoma. Before we go on, tell me in the comments where in the world you're listening from, and hit subscribe so you don't miss a story like this. Bradley twisted around in the driver's seat, his coffee forgotten in the console cup holder. Duke was a rock. Duke was the dog who had gone into a burning trailer on Route 66 last winter without so much as a flinch. The dog who had cornered a man with a shotgun in a garage and held his ground until backup arrived. Duke did not cry. Duke did not shake. And yet the German shepherd behind the mesh divider was shaking so hard, the whole back bench of the patrol car was rattling. His nose pressed against the wire, his eyes locked on the radio speaker like the sound was a smell he could follow through the wall. On the dispatch channel, a woman was still talking, her voice tired and thin. She said she had been driving south on Route 40 near the fairgrounds, that a pickup truck had come out of a side road without headlights, clipped her back end, spun her onto the shoulder and taken off north without stopping. She said she was fine, no bleeding, but her rear axle sounded wrong. She said her name was Rachel Owens. She said she was standing in the gas station lot across from the closed diner, wearing a green coat, and she would wait right there for whoever could come out. Duke made a sound then that Bradley would remember for the rest of his life. It was not a bark, it was not a whine. It was something in between, high in the back of his throat, the sound a dog makes when the person he has been waiting for at the front window all day finally comes up the driveway. He threw his shoulder against the door, then again, and Bradley had to reach back and put a hand flat on the mesh, just to keep him from breaking his own body against the metal. "Easy," Bradley said, though his voice came out thinner than he meant it to. "Easy, partner. What the hell is with you?" Duke did not settle. Duke would not settle. Bradley keyed the mic with the hand that was not on the divider. He told dispatch to inform Miss Owens that Unit 14 was 6 minutes out and to please stay in the lot with the interior lights on. Dispatch echoed back and dropped off. In the sudden quiet of the radio, Duke let out one more of those high-pushed sounds, then dropped his head and started pawing at the door handle like he had seen humans do it 1,000 times and could not understand why it was not working for him tonight. Bradley put the car in drive. He was not a man who trusted his own gut over training, not usually. In 11 years on the road, he had learned that instinct without evidence got officers killed and got civilians hurt. But something about the way his dog was falling apart in the back seat, something about the woman's voice on the radio, made him press the gas pedal a little harder than the call warranted. He hit the lights, but not the siren. There was nobody on Route 40 at this hour except a coyote crossing the median who did not even look up. He kept talking as he drove. He talked to Duke the way he did on long shifts, the way partners talk when the world outside the windows has gone black, and everything about the job has narrowed down to the person in the seat next to you. "You know her, buddy," he said. "You hear something you know?" Duke made the sound again. Bradley did not know then, and could not have known, that the word he had just said had been the dog's name once. He did not know that the dog he was talking to had been born in a wooden whelping box on a small farm outside Tulsa, that he had been given by a breeder in exchange for a used chest freezer, that he had been carried home in a woman's coat because she had not brought a crate, and that the woman had spent the whole drive back saying, "Hey buddy, hey buddy, hey buddy," in the voice that a person uses only for something small enough to hold in one hand. He did not know that the puppy had grown into a lanky 10-month-old with a habit of climbing onto the porch swing every night to watch the driveway for headlights, or that he had disappeared from that porch on an October afternoon while the woman was inside on the phone with her insurance company. He did not know any of that yet. All he knew was that the woman on the radio had put something loose inside his partner that had been locked down tight for a very long time. The gas station came into view at the top of the rise, its canopy lights bleeding a cold blue puddle onto the wet asphalt. Bradley could see the pickup on the shoulder, back end crumpled, hazard lights blinking. He could see the little sedan with its rear quarter panel pushed in, parked crooked at the far edge of the lot. And he could see her, a small figure in a green coat, standing under the second pump with her arms wrapped around herself and her breath making a white cloud in the November air. He was still 50 yards out when Duke started throwing himself against the divider again. Harder now, chest heaving, whining like a dog left too long in a car in the sun. Bradley pulled in slow, angled his own vehicle so the headlights lit her without blinding her, and put it in park. He killed the overhead lights. He reached back and unclipped the divider latch. He was going to hold the leash. That was the plan. Hold the leash, walk the dog around, keep him on a heel, do the job. That was always the plan. He got the back door open maybe 6 inches before Duke shot past him like a black and tan streak. No leash, no collar in Bradley's hand, just 70 pounds of muscle and old memory tearing across a wet parking lot toward a woman who had not seen him coming yet. "Duke!" Bradley shouted. It came out with the whole weight of the department behind it, the voice he used when the dog was about to hit a suspect and needed to know to disengage. "Duke, stop!" Duke did not stop. Rachel Owens turned toward the sound and put both hands up in front of her. Half a shield, half a greeting, the way you do when something is coming at you fast, and you have not sorted out yet whether to be afraid. Bradley started to run. He was going to reach her a second too late, and he knew it, and there was nothing he could do except pray his partner remembered his training in the last 3 feet. Duke slowed. He did more than slow. He almost stumbled. He dropped his rear end low, tucked his shoulders in, and the last stretch of that run turned into a kind of crawl, ears back, tail low, the whole big body of him gone humble in a way Bradley had never seen him go humble for anyone but the K9 trainer who had first put a lead on him at 14 months old. He crossed the last of the distance on his belly, and when he reached her boots, he pushed his head up under her hand, like a house pet who had been gone all day. Rachel's knees gave out. She did not sit. She fell straight down onto the wet blacktop, both hands full of the dog's face, her forehead against his forehead, and the sound that came out of her was a sound Bradley would think about for months afterward. It was not a scream. It was not a sob. It was a word repeated over and over in a voice that had forgotten it knew how to make that word. "Buddy," she said, "buddy, buddy, buddy." Bradley slowed to a walk about 15 feet away, then stopped, because the whole scene in front of him had turned into something too private for him to walk through. His partner, the dog he had brought home to the department kennel every night for 3 years, was on his side in a parking lot at 3 in the morning. All 4 legs stretched out, letting a stranger cry into his fur. Except she was not a stranger. She could not be a stranger. Bradley had seen dogs love their handlers, seen them tolerate strangers, seen them work through pain and hunger and fear because their person had asked them to. He had never seen a dog do what Duke was doing now, which was to lie down and go boneless, the way a puppy does in the lap of the person who fed it its first meal. He stood there for a long minute before he cleared his throat. "Ma'am," he said. "Miss Owens." She did not look up. She had one arm hooked under the dog's neck and the other hand flat against the star of white fur on his chest, and she was not looking at Bradley at all. "Ma'am," he said again, softer. "Are you hurt anywhere?" She shook her head against the dog's shoulder. "Do you know this animal?" he asked. That got her. She lifted her face, and Bradley saw for the first time what a young woman she was, maybe 30, 32, with a smear of black mascara down one cheek and eyes so red he wondered if she had been crying before the pickup ever hit her. She looked at him like she was trying to figure out whether he was real. "He's mine," she said. Bradley did not answer that yet. He crouched down slow, keeping his hands where the dog could see them, and reached out to scratch behind the shepherd's ear. "His name is Duke," he said, gentle. "He's a working dog, ma'am. Department K9. We've been partners 3 years. I'm afraid you might have him mixed up with a look-alike. Shepherds can favor each other pretty strong." She stared at him. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then, without letting go of the dog, she reached into the inside pocket of her green coat and pulled out a phone. Her hand was shaking so badly that she had to hold her wrist with the other hand to get the screen to unlock. She scrolled. She turned it toward him. Bradley looked. The photo on the screen was a shepherd puppy, maybe 10 months old, sitting on a porch step next to a red water bowl. Same broad head, same black mask, same white blaze in the shape of a lopsided cross across the chest. Bradley had washed that white blaze at least 100 times over 3 years. He knew it, the way you know the birthmark on the shoulder of a person you love. He had joked about it to the guys in the locker room. "Cross-hearted dog," he had called Duke, because if you looked at it in the right light, the blaze looked exactly like the intersection of 2 little wooden beams. He looked at the photo. He looked at the dog under Rachel Owens's hand. He looked at the photo again. His stomach did something slow and cold. "Mom," he said. He heard his own voice, and it did not sound like a police officer at all. "Where was this picture taken?" "My mother's porch," she said, "outside Tulsa. He was 10 months old. Somebody took him out of my yard 3 weeks after that." Bradley did not answer. He did not know how to. He was already running the paperwork in his head. The intake sheet on Duke from the day the department had gotten him. The story the trainers had told him about a raid on a bad kennel in Muskogee. About a man who was breeding heavy-bodied bully mixes for pit work and using the softer dogs, the ones with the wrong temperament, as what the trainers had called, in careful, sanitized language, live equipment. The trainers had told him Duke was one of those. Had been. Would have been. The words they used were always past tense. The paperwork said the dog was found running loose along a county road. No chip listed, no owner listed. Adopted through a non-profit and donated to the department after he passed the K9 aptitude screen with the highest marks any of them had seen from a shelter dog. The paperwork was neat. The paperwork had signatures. And here, on a wet asphalt parking lot at 3 in the morning, was a woman who had a photograph on her phone of the same dog wearing the same white cross on his chest, and the dog was not acting like a dog who had been found on the side of a road by a stranger. Bradley let out a long breath. "When did you lose him?" he asked. "October," she said. 7 years ago. 28th of October. I was inside on the phone. He was on the porch. I came out and the porch was empty and the gate was open." She was speaking in short sentences, the way people speak when they have said something 1,000 times before and stripped it down to the bones. "I put up flyers for 2 years. I offered a reward. I drove out to every shelter within 100 miles at least twice. And then one day I couldn't do it anymore, and I put his collar in a drawer and I stopped looking." Bradley nodded slow. "He was chipped?" he asked. "He was chipped," she said. "Right shoulder. I paid the extra to have the number registered nationally." Bradley closed his eyes. Every K9 in his department had been chipped when they came in. It was standard. It was a working dog thing, an ownership thing, a proof of life thing. The chips were scanned once a year at the vet checks, but they were scanned against the department database, the working dog registry, not against the civilian one. Nobody ever thought to cross-reference a duty animal against the missing pets list, because working dogs were never missing pets. They were donated. They were rescued. They came with paperwork. The paperwork said so. Bradley opened his eyes and looked at Rachel Owens, and he made a decision that he would think about for a long time afterward, because it was the kind of decision that changed the rest of a life. "Mom," he said, "I need you to come to the station with me. Bring the photo. Bring the chip number if you have it in a folder somewhere. We're going to scan this dog, and if it comes up the way I think it's going to come up, you and I are going to have a long conversation, and I mean it when I say a long one." Rachel Owens looked at him. She looked at the dog. She let out a laugh that was mostly a sob and pressed her forehead to Duke's forehead one more time. "All right," she said. "All right, officer." Bradley called for a wrecker for her sedan and for a second unit to work the hit and run report. He put Duke in the back of his patrol car with the divider open this time because there was no way in hell the dog was going to sit behind mesh on the drive back, and he opened the front passenger door for Rachel. She climbed in, one hand still on the dog's ruff through the seat gap. She did not let go the whole ride. Bradley drove east, past the shuttered diner, past the county line sign, out toward the little brick station that served 3 towns and a stretch of interstate. The whole way he kept glancing over. He kept expecting the dog to remember he was a working animal, to sit up straight and behave. Duke did not. Duke lay curled with his big head in the woman's lap and his eyes half closed, and every few minutes he let out a long, shuddering breath through his nose, the way a dog does when it has finally set down something heavy it has been carrying a long time. Bradley thought about the raid in Muskogee. He had not been on it, but he had heard about it. Every K9 handler in eastern Oklahoma had heard about it. A rural property, 3 barns, dogs in every kind of cage you could imagine, and in a back kennel behind the smaller barn, a knot of shepherds and shepherd mixes that had not fit either category. The man who ran the property had told the deputies, when they cuffed him, that he had a soft spot for shepherds and that he was keeping those ones as pets. The deputies had not believed him. They had known what the shepherds were for. Shepherds were smart enough to figure out the game and hard to teach not to protect the person who fed them, which made them terrible fighters and the softest ones the operators kept aside for other uses. Bradley did not want to think about what those other uses had been. He glanced over again. Rachel had her fingers deep in the fur behind Duke's ear, and she was scratching in slow, small circles, the way you scratch a dog you have scratched 1,000 times before. She was not looking at Bradley. She was looking straight ahead at the dark road, and there were tears sliding down her face without making any sound. "Miss Owens," Bradley said, gentle. "Rachel," she said. Her voice was steadier now. "Rachel is fine." "Rachel," he took a breath, "I'm going to tell you where we got this dog, and it's not a good story, not for the beginning of it. It gets better toward where you and I are sitting right now, but the middle part is rough. Do you want to hear it in the car or after we scan him?" She was quiet for a long time. Duke let out another one of those long breaths. "Tell me now," she said. "I've already imagined worse. Whatever it is, it can't be worse than what my head made up on the nights I couldn't sleep." He was not sure that was true, but he told her. He kept it clean. He did not describe. He said that a man outside Muskogee had been running a bad operation for years and had finally been raided on a tip from a delivery driver who had noticed something wrong through a fence. He said that Duke had been one of about a dozen shepherds pulled out of the property. He said that when the rescue got the dogs to the vet, most of them had health problems from long-term neglect, but that Duke, for reasons no one could quite explain, had been in better shape than the others. He said that the trainers who evaluated Duke had told him at the time that they thought Duke had been fed on purpose, kept back, because someone in that operation had decided he was too smart to throw away. He said that they had believed then that the dog would never be adoptable as a pet, that the only chance for a shepherd like that was to give him a job. He said Duke had passed every test they threw at him. First one in his class on scent work, first one in obedience, steady, never a bite out of anger, only on command. The trainers had called Duke's temperament the softest they had seen in a duty dog in 20 years. Bradley had picked him because he had a wife at the time and a stepdaughter who had not yet gotten used to big dogs, and he had wanted a partner who would come home and be a pet. He did not tell Rachel that his wife had left him 18 months into the partnership and had taken the stepdaughter with her, or that Duke had been the reason he had not lost his mind in the first 6 months of that quiet. He would tell her that later. He said what he had to say. He said the paperwork the department had received from the rescue had listed Duke as found running loose along a county road, no chip, no owner known. He said that he did not know now, and might never know, whether the rescue had scanned Duke and gotten a hit and simply not followed up, or whether the paperwork had come to them that way from the property in Muskogee, or whether the scanner they had used that day had missed the chip. He said that the department had never rescanned Duke against a civilian registry because working dogs did not get scanned against civilian registries. He said that if she had been chasing a chip number all 7 years, she had been chasing a number that nobody had ever thought to look up. Rachel did not say anything for a long time. "He's warm," she finally said. Bradley nodded. "He's a good dog," he said. "He's a very good dog." "I know," she said. "I raised him." The station lot was empty, except for a single cruiser and the graveyard sergeant's truck. Bradley parked under the sodium light by the side door and turned off the engine. Duke lifted his head, looked at him, and did not move to get out. Rachel stroked one long, slow line down the length of his back. "You want me to leash him?" she asked. "He'll walk with you," Bradley said, quiet. "He'll walk with you fine." They went in through the side door, past the coffee pot and the wall of framed photographs of retired K-9 partners, past the front desk where the graveyard sergeant, a heavy older man named Lonnie Duplessis, looked up over his readers and lifted one eyebrow high enough that it disappeared into his hairline. Bradley did not stop to explain. He led Rachel back to the small conference room they used for interviews with witnesses who did not want to sit in an interview room, and he asked her to wait there while he got the scanner and the chip records binder. Duke did not follow Bradley. Duke lay down in front of the door of the conference room, facing out, and put his head on his paws. Bradley stood in the hallway for a second, looking at that. Then he went and got the scanner. The scan took 40 seconds. Bradley knew how to do it. He set the wand along the shepherd's right shoulder blade, pressed the button, and watched the little screen tick through digits until it stopped and displayed a 15-character string in tired black liquid crystal. Rachel had already pulled the paperwork up on her phone. She had scrolled to a scanned copy of a chip registration form filled out in blue pen, dated 7 years and 1 month ago. Her signature was at the bottom. She was 23 years old in that signature, or 24, and it showed in the loops of the letters. Bradley looked at the string on the scanner. He looked at the string on her phone. He looked at the string on the scanner again. He turned the scanner around so she could see the screen. The number was hers. It had always been hers. Rachel did not cry this time. She had cried herself out in the parking lot. She just sat there in the folding chair with the shepherd's head across her boot, and after a long time she said, "What happens now?" Bradley pulled up the chair across from her and sat down. "Now," he said, "you and I have some things to work out, and I want to be honest with you about what those things are, because you deserve honesty." She nodded. "Legally," he said, "Duke is department property. He was legally transferred to us by a licensed rescue 7 years ago, and the paperwork on our end is clean. I don't have any reason to think anybody at this department did anything wrong. What I do think is that somebody, somewhere in the chain, missed a chip scan. That's negligence at best. It doesn't make our claim on him bad. It just makes it complicated." "He's mine," Rachel said. She said it flat and calm, but it was not a question and it was not a plea. It was just the fact of the situation as she understood it. "He was yours," Bradley said. "Legally, right now, he's a working K-9 dog 3 months from mandatory retirement. My chief is not going to hand him over tonight, and I am not going to ask him to. That is not how any of this works." Rachel looked at him. There was something hard in her face that he had not seen before. It was the look of a woman who had lost the same thing twice in one night and had decided that it was not going to happen a third time. "Officer Kessler," she said. Bradley. She took a breath. "I am not walking out of this building without that dog. I understand what you're telling me. I hear the words. And I am telling you respectfully that I am not walking out of this building without that dog." I will sleep on the floor of this station tonight. I will hire a lawyer in the morning. I will call every reporter in Tulsa. I don't want to do any of those things, but you are asking me to leave him again after 7 years, and I am not able to do that. I am not able. Bradley held her eyes. He believed her. He got up. He said, "Stay here a minute." And he went out into the hallway and closed the door behind him. And he stood there with his forehead against the doorframe for a long moment before he walked down to Sergeant Duplessis's desk. Lonnie looked up. "What have you got?" he said. Bradley told him. Lonnie listened without interrupting. When Bradley was done, the old sergeant took his readers off, set them on the desk, and rubbed the bridge of his nose with 2 thick fingers. "Well, that is a mess," he said. "Yes, sir." "Where's the dog right now?" "Guarding the door of the conference room." "Guarding it from which side?" "Her side." Lonnie let out a small, tired laugh. "All right, here's what we're going to do. You are going to get that woman a cup of coffee. You are going to write me a statement about what happened tonight, including the chip match. I am going to call the chief at, 4 in the morning, which he is going to love, and then I am going to email the rescue that gave us that dog 7 years ago and start pulling the paperwork chain. Nobody is taking that dog anywhere tonight. Nobody is signing anything tonight. Nobody is calling any reporters tonight. Tell her that. Tell her the department is not going to hide behind a technicality on this, and tell her from me, personally, that if that dog is who she says he is, we are going to make it right. Are we clear?" Bradley let out the breath he had been holding. "Yes, sir. Now go tell her that, and then bring me the scanner." Bradley went back to the conference room. He told Rachel exactly what Lonnie had said. She listened. When he was done, she leaned forward and put both her hands over her face for a full 30 seconds, and when she took them down, she said, I'm sorry I threatened you. I don't know how to do this without being angry." "You don't have to know," Bradley said. "You just have to sit here with your dog while the rest of us figure it out." She nodded. She scratched behind Duke's ear. Duke did not move. Bradley brought her a cup of the terrible station coffee and a stale packet of oyster crackers and left her sitting there. He went back to his own desk and started writing the statement. He wrote for 2 hours. By the time the sun came up over the flat brown fields east of the station, he had a 5-page report that started with the radio call in the early hours and ended with the chip match a little after 4. Lonnie read it, nodded once, and picked up the phone. The chief called back inside of an hour. The chief was not a man who liked complicated. He was a man who liked forms and columns, and above all, headlines that did not involve the word seized. When Lonnie explained the situation to him on speakerphone with Bradley standing in front of the desk, there was a long silence on the other end. Then the chief said, "Kessler." "Sir." "How long till the dog is off the roster anyway?" 87 days, sir." "Was he going to be adopted at the end of it?" "I was going to adopt him myself, sir." "Uh-huh." Another silence. "And this woman, she a stable person?" "She's a farm owner outside Sapulpa, runs a small operation, from what I saw of her registration. Sole proprietor, clean record. Insurance was current on the sedan she was driving. Not a nut, sir." "All right." The chief sighed. "Here's what we're going to do. We're not going to move the dog off duty today because that will look like we did something wrong. He goes back on the roster tomorrow. Between then and his retirement date, you and Miss Owens work out a joint custody agreement in writing that the department can sign off on. She gets weekend visitation starting immediately, effective as soon as legal writes something up. On the retirement date, we transfer him to her. Full ownership. We pay for any vet care he needs in the meantime. In exchange, she signs off on the department's paperwork on the front end. Nobody sues anybody. Nobody talks to any reporters. Everybody is happy. Does that sound like something we can all live with?" Lonnie looked at Bradley. Bradley looked at the wall for a second, thinking. "Chief," he said, "she is not going to be able to leave here today without him." The chief was quiet again. Then, he said, you are going to have to convince her because I am not going to have that photograph in the paper. Do you hear me, Kessler? I'm not going to have a picture in the Tulsa World of a woman clutching her stolen dog in the front seat of a patrol car with the headline, "Everybody in this state is going to write. Convince her." The line clicked off. Bradley stood there. Lonnie put his readers back on. You want my advice? Lonnie said. Yes, sir. Take her to breakfast. You look like hell. She looks like she's about to fall over. Feed her some pancakes and talk to her like a person and see what comes out. Sir, she's a witness in an active hit and run. Kessler, get out of my office. Bradley got out. He walked back down the hall. He opened the conference room door slowly. Rachel had her head back against the wall, eyes closed, one hand still buried in Duke's fur. The dog looked up when the door opened and gave Bradley the look he had been giving him for 3 years, the look that meant, okay, we are working now, tell me what the plan is. Bradley crouched down in front of both of them. Rachel, he said, you want to get some breakfast? There's a diner in Sepulpa on the way to your place. My treat. We can talk about how we're going to do this. She opened her eyes. She looked at him for a long time. With the dog, she said. With the dog, he said. The dog gets a seat. The dog gets bacon. She laughed. It was a small, tired laugh, but it was a laugh, and it was the first one he had heard out of her all night. Okay, she said. The diner in Sepulpa was called Marla's. It sat off Frontage Road, across from a feed store, and had a hand-painted sign in the window that read, All-Day Breakfast, Pancakes, since 1953. Marla herself was behind the counter. She was somewhere north of 70, had a purple streak in her white hair, and when Bradley walked in with a shepherd on a leash and a woman in a green coat with a dead sedan waiting for a wrecker, she took one look at all three of them and pointed to the back booth. He can be back there, she said, just no barking at the sausage. Duke did not bark at the sausage. Duke ducked under the table, put his head on Rachel's foot, and let out one long breath that turned into a snore inside of 2 minutes. Rachel put both hands around the coffee mug the moment Marla set it down and held it like she was warming up out of a snowstorm. He hasn't slept like that in 3 years, Bradley said. He watched the dog under the table. I thought that was just him. I thought some dogs didn't snore. He's been holding it in, Rachel said, quiet. He's been on the job. Bradley did not know what to say to that. Marla brought them 2 menus. They ordered without opening them. Pancakes and bacon for both of them. Extra bacon for the passenger under the table. Marla nodded like she saw this exact table every morning of her life and walked away. Bradley waited until the coffee was in front of them before he started. Here's the situation, he said, and I'm going to tell you the whole thing, and then you tell me what you can live with, and we'll see if we can find something in the middle. Rachel nodded. She was not going to speak until he was done. He could see it in her face. He told her the chief's offer, the joint custody agreement, the weekend visit starting immediately, the transfer on the retirement date, 87 days out, the paperwork trade, the no lawyers, no reporters. He told her Lonnie's version, which was that the department was not going to hide behind a technicality, and he told her that Lonnie had a reputation for meaning what he said. Then he told her his part. Rachel, he said, I would like to sign him over to you today. I mean that. I understand what he is to you. I have understood since the second I saw him lie down in that parking lot. But if we do this today, if you and I walk out of Marla's and go straight to my chief and demand paperwork right now, we are going to make a public mess out of something that has already hurt you enough. The department will fight it in the press because they have to. The rescue that gave him to us will fight it because they have to. It could take a year. It could take longer. And Duke is 9 years old. He does not have a year to spend in a legal fight. Rachel closed her eyes. 87 days, Bradley said. That's it. 87 days from tomorrow, he is officially yours. Between now and then, he goes home to your farm every Friday night and comes back to me on Monday morning. You keep all his weekends. I keep his weekdays because the department needs him on the roster to close out his career clean. And on the day he retires, I drive him to your gate, and I hand you the leash. That is what the chief will agree to. That is what I will make him agree to." She opened her eyes. "And if I say no," she said, "then we do it your way, and I stand next to you when we do." She looked at him. She looked at him for a long time. Under the table, Duke let out another snore. "You'd do that?" she said. "You'd stand next to me against your own department?" Bradley thought about it before he answered. He had been thinking about it since Lonnie hung up on the chief, actually, though he had not realized until she asked. "He's not their partner," he said. "He's mine, and he's yours. He's not theirs. Yeah, I'd stand next to you." Rachel put both her hands over her face again. She did this, Bradley was learning, whenever she needed a second to not be looked at. "Okay," she said from behind her hands. "Okay, 87 days. You sure?" "I'm sure." She dropped her hands. "But I want 2 things." "Name them." "1. I want it in writing that if he gets hurt on duty in the next 87 days, the department pays for his full recovery, no matter what it costs. And I want a copy of that in writing before I leave the station today." "Done." 2. I want you to come out to the farm on the weekends too. He knows you. He loves you. I'm not going to be the reason my dog loses half of the family he's got. If he's going to have shared time, he needs to see us both together, or he's going to spend every Monday morning of the next 3 months thinking he did something wrong. That is not a thing I am willing to do to him." Bradley stared at her. "That is a lot to ask of a man you met 4 hours ago," he said. "I know," she said, "but he asks it of you, not me." Bradley looked down at his coffee. He thought about his own kitchen at 3 in the afternoon on a Saturday, empty except for a dog bed nobody was sleeping in and a television he did not turn on. He thought about the way his weeks had been stacking up for 4 years, since the divorce, since the stepdaughter had stopped answering his birthday texts. He thought about a farm outside Sapulpa he had never been to, with a porch swing on it, and a woman across the table from him who had asked him a question that was not really about the dog. "Yeah," he said. "I'll come." Marla brought the pancakes. They ate mostly in silence. When they were done, Bradley slid Duke's extra bacon under the table on a napkin, and Duke ate it politely without lunging, the way he had been trained. Rachel watched, and something in her eyes softened, and she said, "He always had good manners. That was the thing about him. He never took food off the counter, not once, even when he could reach." "He still doesn't," Bradley said. "I trust him with a plate on the coffee table." She smiled. "Would you tell me one thing?" she said. "Would you tell me his name, the one you gave him? Because I have to call him something and I don't want to confuse him after 7 years. Bradley thought about that. "His full name," he said, "is Duke of Route 66. The trainers named him. There was a K9 before him in the class who was named Route 66, retired the year before Duke came in, and they thought it was funny to name the next one Dukov. It's on his paperwork. Nobody has ever called him anything but Duke." Rachel nodded. "Then we call him Duke," she said. "He's a working dog. He earned that name. Buddy was a puppy on a porch. He's not that dog anymore. He can be a new dog with an old heart." Bradley did not know then that he would remember that sentence 20 years later. He did not know a lot of things that morning. He did not know that he was already halfway to loving her, and that he would spend the drive back to the station wondering how a person could do a thing like that so fast, at his age, with everything that had already happened to him. He did not know, driving back with Rachel in the passenger seat and Duke asleep across her lap, that in less than 2 years he would be standing on the front porch of a small farmhouse outside Sapulpa in a rented tuxedo, watching that same shepherd walk up the aisle between two rows of folding chairs with two gold rings tied to his vest, and that the whole shape of his life would be different because a radio had crackled and a dog had heard something a man could not. He did not know any of that, but he was starting to guess. The paperwork was written that afternoon. It was 3 pages long, the plainest legal document the department's part-time attorney had ever put together, and it said what the chief had said it would say. Weekend custody with Rachel Owens beginning immediately, full transfer of ownership at the mandatory retirement date, then 85 days out and counting. Department responsibility for any and all veterinary care in the meantime. Miss Owens's signature at the bottom in careful blue pen, right next to Officer Kessler's, right next to Sergeant Duplessis's, right next to the chief's, who had come in wearing khakis instead of his uniform and had not looked at the dog when he walked past him because he had said later that if he looked at the dog he was going to start crying, and he was too old to cry in his own station. Rachel drove home that afternoon in a rental sedan because her own car was in the shop, and Duke rode in the back seat behind her, not shaking this time, just watching the road slide by with his eyes half open like a passenger who trusted the driver. She got him home before dark. She showed him the porch and the yard and the barn and the old red water bowl she had never thrown away, and she cried again when he walked past the bowl without recognizing it, because 7 years was a long time, and he had been a puppy when he saw it last, and puppies remember voices and smells, but not colors of plastic bowls. Then she took him inside, and she made him a bed on the floor next to hers out of 2 old comforters, and she lay awake most of the night, listening to him breathe. He snored the whole night through. Bradley drove up on Saturday morning at 9. He brought a bag of the food Duke was used to, a chew rope, a spare leash, and a 6-pack of a decent local root beer, because he did not know if she drank beer, and he did not want to guess wrong on the first visit. Rachel met him at the gate in jeans and a flannel shirt, and a look on her face like she had not decided yet whether to be nervous or relieved. Duke ran the length of the driveway to meet him. Bradley crouched down. Duke bowled him over. Rachel laughed for the first time that morning. "He's been asking for you," she said. "He kept standing at the door." "He knew today was Saturday," Bradley said. "He always knew. On days he's off, he'd wait at the door in the morning until I put on jeans instead of the uniform, and then he'd go get his leash." They walked the farm. It was a small place, 60 acres, most of it fenced pasture that Rachel leased out to a neighbor who ran cattle. Rachel herself kept goats, 6 milkers, a couple of wethers, and a mean old buck named Winston, who had, according to Rachel, personal opinions about the postman that were not fit to repeat. She sold the milk to a soap maker in Broken Arrow and to a small cheese place in Tulsa, and it was not a lot of money, but it was enough because the mortgage on the farm had been paid off by her grandfather before her grandfather died. She lived cheap. She had a garden, she had 1 truck, she was fine. Duke followed them the whole way, not on a leash. He did not need one. He walked at whichever heel was closer, sometimes Rachel's, sometimes Bradley's, and every so often he would drop back to sniff the tracks of the goats through the fence and then trot to catch up. He passed the buck without picking a fight, which Rachel said was more than she could say for most dogs. They ate lunch on the back porch, sandwiches, iced tea. Bradley asked, careful, because he had been wanting to ask since he read the missing pet report about the day Duke had been taken. Rachel looked out over the pasture for a long moment before she answered. "I was 23, she said. "I lived in a little rental outside Tulsa. It was me and Buddy and a fiancé named Colton, though the fiancé wasn't around much by then. We'd been engaged 8 months, and I already knew the wedding wasn't going to happen. He was a good-looking man with a mean streak he only showed at home, and I was not going to marry a mean streak, but I was working up the nerve to give the ring back. Buddy did not like Colton. That was the interesting thing. Buddy liked everybody. Buddy would roll over for the mailman, but if Colton walked in the door, Buddy went and stood in front of me every single time like he was waiting for something, not growling, not showing teeth, just standing. "Dogs know," Bradley said. "Dogs know," she said. "Anyway, that morning I told Colton I couldn't do it. I gave him the ring back on the kitchen counter. He didn't yell. That was the worst part, actually. He didn't yell. He just took the ring and looked at Buddy for a long minute. And then he said, 'You picked the dog,' and he walked out. 2 hours later, Buddy was gone off the porch, and the gate was open. I called Colton for weeks. He never answered. I drove to his mother's house in Broken Arrow, and his mother said he'd taken a job in Dallas and moved out. She said she didn't know anything about a dog. I believed her. She was a decent woman. She sent me a Christmas card that first year, apologizing on his behalf for something she wouldn't name." Bradley set his sandwich down. "You think he took him?" Rachel let out a long, slow breath. "I've thought a lot of things over 7 years," she said. "I've thought maybe the gate blew open. I've thought maybe a neighbor kid let him out. I've thought maybe somebody driving by saw a purebred shepherd puppy on a porch and made a decision. But if you're asking me what I think, yes. I think Colton took him. I don't think he meant to hurt him. I think he wanted to hurt me. I think he handed the dog to somebody he knew, and I think that somebody was the wrong somebody." Bradley was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know where Colton is now?" he asked. Rachel shook her head. "I stopped asking about him 5 years ago. His mother died the year after I gave the ring back. I went to the funeral out of respect for her. He wasn't there. There was talk that he was in the oil field somewhere. That's all I know." Bradley thought about that. He thought about it for the rest of the afternoon. He did not say what he was thinking. He did not say that he was going to look. He just filed the name away. Colton, no last name yet. Ex-fiancé, Dallas, oil field. And he watched Duke lie in the sun on the porch boards with his chin on Rachel's boot, and he decided, without saying it out loud, that he was going to find out what had actually happened to that puppy on that October afternoon, whether Rachel wanted the answer or not. He asked her at the door before he left if there was anything she wanted from town during the week. She said no. He asked her if he could call her that week. She said yes. He drove home the long way, through Bristow, past the fairgrounds, past the gas station where the whole thing had started, and he thought the whole way about how many times in his life he had already had a Saturday like that one, and could not remember any of them. The next week was busy. Bradley worked his shifts. Duke worked with him, though every dog handler in the department could see that something in the shepherd had shifted, that he was no longer holding some part of himself in reserve. He was gentler. He was more alert. He was, if such a thing was possible in a 9-year-old working dog, happier. On Friday afternoons at 5, he waited at Bradley's truck without being told. And on Sunday nights, he came back to Bradley's apartment and slept. And on Monday morning, he went to work. And everybody in the K-9 unit started calling him the luckiest dog in Oklahoma. Bradley found Colton on the 3rd Tuesday. He did it on his own time, on his own laptop, using nothing that would have gotten him in trouble at a hearing. He found a Colton Marsh, 34, formerly of Broken Arrow, who had spent 4 years working on a rig in West Texas and had come back to Oklahoma 2 years earlier and taken a job at a farm and ranch supply outside Tulsa. He had no record. Marsh was his mother's maiden name. He had married a woman named Denise in Sherman, Texas 6 years ago, and they had 1 child, a boy of 4. He looked in the photograph on the store's staff page, like a man who had gotten older, harder than he had wanted to. Bradley did not tell Rachel he had found Colton. Not yet. He drove down to the store on a Wednesday afternoon on his lunch break, out of uniform. He walked in. Colton was at the counter. Colton did not know him. Bradley bought a coil of baling twine and a pair of leather gloves, and at the register, he looked Colton in the eye and said quiet, "I have a question for you. It's not a police question. It's a personal one." Colton went very still. "Do you remember a shepherd puppy?" Bradley said. 10 months old, belonged to a young woman named Rachel Owens, disappeared off a porch in Tulsa on the 28th of October, 7 years ago. Colton set both his hands flat on the counter. He did not deny it. That was what Bradley remembered later, that Colton did not deny it. Colton looked down at his own hands, and his knuckles went white, and after a long moment he said, in a voice that had gone dry, "Is she okay?" "She's okay," Bradley said. "The dog's okay too. He's alive, he's home. But I want to hear what happened to him from you, and I want to hear it right now, or I will come back tomorrow and hear it in front of your wife." Colton looked up. He looked genuinely afraid, and under the fear, genuinely sorry, and Bradley was old enough to know that both of those things could be true in the same face at the same time. "There's a break room in the back," Colton said. "Give me 10 minutes." Bradley waited. When Colton came out, he took Bradley outside, behind the store, to a picnic table under a leaning cottonwood, and he lit a cigarette with hands that did not want to cooperate. He said what Bradley had already guessed. He said that he had taken the dog. He said that he had done it because he had been humiliated and drunk and stupid, and because he had convinced himself in the 2 hours between the ring on the counter and the empty porch that it was the dog that had turned Rachel against him, that if he took the dog, she would come looking for it and he could bring it back and be a hero. He said that had lasted about 40 minutes into the drive. He said that by then he was 3 counties out and had realized how it would look. He said that he had panicked and that he had known a man from his cousin's side of the family, a man named Earl, who lived outside Muskogee and who had told Colton once that he bred hunting dogs. He said he had driven to Earl's place with Buddy in the passenger seat, and he had told Earl he needed to lose the dog for a while, and Earl had said sure and taken the leash out of Colton's hand and asked no questions. He said, staring at the cigarette, that he had not known what Earl actually did with dogs. He said that he had found out 3 years later when the raid was on the news, and that he had gone through the rest of that day thinking he was going to be sick, and that he had spent every night since wondering whether the shepherd he had handed over was still alive. He said, "I have not slept a full night in 7 years." Bradley believed him. He had interviewed enough liars to know one, and he did not think Colton was lying. He thought Colton was a small man who had done a small, mean thing that had turned into a much bigger thing than he could ever have imagined, and who had been carrying it alone since a news report told him what he had done. "He is alive," Bradley said. "He is a working K9 dog for the department in Bristow. His handler is standing in front of you. His owner has him back on her farm every weekend. He is fine." Colton put his face down onto his own arms on the picnic table and cried, and the cigarette burned down to the filter in his fingers. Bradley let him. When Colton picked his head up, Bradley said, "Here's what happens now. You are going to write a letter to Rachel Owens. You are going to tell her everything you just told me, in your own handwriting on paper. You are going to seal it, and I am going to take it to her. She is going to read it or not read it. That is her choice. You are not going to contact her. You are not going to show up at her farm. You are not going to send flowers or make phone calls or send apology texts. You had your say 7 years ago when you took her dog off her porch. You do not get another one. This letter is the last thing she will ever hear from you, and if you contact her ever again in any way, I am going to make sure your wife finds out what you did. Are we clear?" Colton nodded. He could not talk. "Write it now," Bradley said. "I'll wait." Colton wrote it in the break room. It took him 40 minutes. When he came out, his eyes were swollen shut, and he had a folded envelope in his hand. He gave it to Bradley without a word. Bradley took it. He walked out to his truck, and he sat there for 10 minutes before he started the engine, because his hands were shaking a little, and he did not want to drive angry. He did not go straight to Rachel. He held the letter for 2 days. He wrestled with it. He asked Lonnie obliquely over coffee at the station what a man was supposed to do with an answer he had gotten to a question that his friend had not asked him to ask. Lonnie listened. Then Lonnie said, "You give her the letter, Kessler. She is a grown woman. It is her question. It is her answer. It is not for you to decide when she gets to hear it." Bradley gave her the letter on Saturday morning. He did not tell her what was in it. He told her only that he had gone looking for Colton, that he had found him, that Colton had written her a letter, and that whatever was in it she should read alone. Then he sat on the porch with Duke while she went inside and closed the bedroom door. She was in there for 2 hours. When she came out, her eyes were red and her face was calm. She sat down on the porch swing next to him. She did not say anything for a long time. Duke came and put his head on her knee. She stroked his ear. "You believe him?" she finally said. "Yeah," Bradley said. "I believe him." "I do too." She let out a long breath. "It's not the answer I would have written for him. It's not even the answer that makes him a good person. But it's the answer that fits. And I think I have been asking that question for so long that I forgot I was already living with the answer." "What do you mean?" I mean the answer was always going to be that a man I trusted did a small, mean thing on a bad day, and that other people I didn't know did much worse things because of the first thing. That is what happens in the world. That is what happened here. It was not glamorous. It was not evil in a movie way. It was just cheap. It was just cheap, and it cost 7 years of my life, and it cost this dog 7 years of his. Bradley did not know what to say. He put his hand on the back of the swing, so it was close to hers, without touching. "I am not going to write him back," Rachel said. "I am not going to sue him. I am not going to make his wife's life hard. But I am not going to forgive him either, not because I don't want to, because I don't think it's mine to give. What he did wasn't to me, it was to Duke. And Duke is going to keep sleeping through the night, and Duke is going to keep eating out of that red bowl on the porch, and that is going to have to be enough for both of us." Bradley let his hand drift over, and their hands ended up on the porch swing rail together, and they sat there a long time. The letter would have been the end of the story, or at least a rest in it, if the man named Earl had stayed in prison. He did not. Bradley found out the way he found out most things that year, which was over the police band on a Thursday afternoon in the middle of nothing. There was a bulletin from the Muskogee County Sheriff's Office. Routine, background, no active alert. Earl Whitten, 7 years into a 10-year sentence on animal cruelty and related charges, had been released on parole on a Tuesday morning and had been assigned an address at a trailer outside Warner. Standard information, standard release. Just for the record, the kind of thing that went past most officers without them thinking about it twice. Bradley pulled over. He sat on the shoulder of Route 40 for 10 minutes reading the bulletin on the little dashboard screen, and then he called Lonnie. "Sarge," he said, "I need a favor." Lonnie was not surprised. Lonnie had been expecting some kind of favor since the day Bradley walked into Marla's diner with a dog and a woman. "Say it." "I need a heads up if Earl Whitten crosses the county line into ours. Kessler, that is not a legal ask." "I know." "But," Lonnie said, "I understand it. I will keep an ear out. I will not put anything on paper. And you will not do anything stupid, will you, Kessler?" "No, sir." "Good." Bradley hung up. He did not tell Rachel. He did not want to tell Rachel. She had spent enough of her life waiting for a shoe to drop. He wanted her to have a season at least of not looking over her shoulder. The shoe dropped on a Sunday afternoon. Bradley was at the farm. He had been coming out on Saturdays for 2 months by then, sometimes staying overnight on the couch downstairs, sometimes not. They had fallen into a rhythm that was not quite a courtship and not quite anything else. A slow, patient thing that had the shape of a friendship on the outside and something more careful on the inside. And Duke was the reason it worked, and also the reason it did not have to be named yet. That afternoon they were splitting firewood behind the barn. Rachel was swinging the maul. Bradley was setting the rounds. Duke was lying in the shade of the barn with his eyes half closed. Duke's head came up. He did not whine this time. He did not shake. He just came up onto his feet, slow and stiff, and he took 2 steps forward and stood between them and the gravel drive, and every hair along his back lifted straight up. A truck was coming up the drive. Bradley did not know the truck. It was a maroon Ford, older, rust at the wheel wells, a small dent in the passenger door. The truck stopped. A man got out. He was late 50s, thin, with a face that had not been outdoors in a long time, and the pale that comes off a person after 7 years of institutional lights. He was wearing a canvas jacket. He was not carrying anything Bradley could see. Duke let out a growl from deep in his chest that Bradley had never heard him make. It was not a bark. It was not a warning. It was the sound of a dog who was making a promise. "Rachel," Bradley said, low, "go inside, now." She did not argue. She dropped them all and walked, not fast, not slow, to the back door of the house. Bradley walked out to meet the man. "Can I help you?" Bradley said. The man stopped 10 feet away. He had his hands where Bradley could see them. He had the sense to know what Duke's posture meant. He looked at Duke for a long moment before he looked at Bradley. "That's my dog," he said. Bradley did not answer. "That's my dog," the man said again. "I heard about him. I heard about a shepherd came out of my kennel that ended up on a police department. I heard where he was living now. He's mine. He was never seized. I never signed off. You people took him without paperwork." "You must be Earl," Bradley said. Earl smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a man who had rehearsed the whole conversation in a cell for a long time. "I know my rights," Earl said. "That dog was never legally seized. The county took him and did not return him when I served my time. That's theft. I could sue. I don't want to sue. I just want the dog. He was worth money then. He is worth more now. I have a buyer, you give me the dog, and I walk off this property, and I do not come back." Bradley did not move. "Earl," he said, "I want you to listen to me carefully, because this is the only time I'm going to say it. That dog was legally seized as evidence in a felony operation. The disposition of the dog was ordered by the district court in Muskogee County. He was transferred to a licensed rescue, then to my department, then to his rightful owner, who happens to be the woman who is standing behind the back door of this house right now with her cell phone in her hand. Every piece of that transfer is on file. You have no claim. You will never have a claim. You are on private property without invitation, and you are threatening the owner of that property. And I am a police officer, and I am going to say this one time and one time only. Get in your truck, turn around, drive down the drive. Do not come back." Earl did not move. Duke took one step forward, just one. It was enough. "You people," Earl said quiet, "you people think you got him. You think you own him. That dog remembers me. That dog knows my hand. You watch. You watch what he does." Earl held out his hand. He held it out with the palm up, the way you offer a dog food. He said, "Buddy, buddy, come here, boy, come on." Duke did not move. Duke did not blink. Duke held Earl's eyes for a full 5 seconds, the growl still coming out of the bottom of his chest, and then, very slow, Duke pulled his lips back and showed every tooth in his head, and he took one more step forward, and Earl's hand dropped. Earl's face went through a lot of colors in a short time. "Get out," Bradley said quiet. "You are one word away from a dog on top of you. Get out." Earl got out. He got back into the truck. He backed down the driveway slow. He stopped at the gate. He looked out the driver's side window at Duke one long time, and Duke stared back, and Earl drove away. Bradley waited until the dust had settled at the end of the drive before he turned and walked back to the house. Rachel was standing in the kitchen with her phone in her hand, and her other hand pressed flat against the counter. She was very pale. "He said Buddy," she said. "I heard him. He said Buddy. He knew the name. He knew the puppy name. Colton must have told him. Colton must have said the name when he handed him over." "Yeah." Duke didn't move. Duke stood between him and me. Duke growled at his own name. Bradley put both hands on the counter next to hers. "Duke did not grow up on that man's leash," he said. "Duke grew up on your porch. He remembers where he came from. He remembers who he is. Earl thought he was clever. Earl was wrong. Rachel let out a shaking breath. She looked up at him. "You are going to have to marry me eventually," she said. "You know that." Bradley laughed. It was a real laugh, from somewhere he had not laughed from in a long time. He said, "I was working up to asking. Work faster." "I will." Earl did not come back. He tried once, 3 weeks later, to file a small claims complaint against the department for the value of the seized dog, and the district court judge in Muskogee County, who happened to be the same judge who had signed the original disposition order 7 years earlier, threw it out from the bench with what the court reporter later described as unusual heat. Earl's parole officer, tipped off by a phone call from Sergeant Duplessis that never appeared on any log, added a new condition to Earl's supervision, requiring him to stay clear of Creek and Tulsa counties. Earl went back to his trailer in Warner. He was arrested 6 months after that for driving on a suspended license and for possession of 2 dogs he was not supposed to own, and he went back inside. Bradley heard about it on the police band on a Wednesday afternoon and did not tell Rachel until Saturday because he did not want to spoil her Wednesday. The department, when they heard the story of Earl at the farm, closed ranks in a way that Bradley had not expected. The chief called him into his office on the Monday after and asked gruffly whether Duke needed anything, whether Rachel needed anything, whether either of them needed the department to do anything else, and when Bradley said no, the chief said fine and told him to close the door on his way out. That afternoon, a work order came through the shop that the fence at the front of Rachel Owens's property, which was 90% county right-of-way, was going to be replaced at county expense because of a long-standing drainage issue that the county had been meaning to fix. The fence went in the following week. It was a new heavy-gauge steel fence with a locking gate. The invoice came to $9,000. Nobody ever sent Rachel a bill. The 87 days were up in late February. Duke's retirement ceremony was held in the parking lot behind the station on a Wednesday afternoon, because a K-9 retirement was a big enough thing for the department to give it a ceremony and a small enough thing that they did it outside on the asphalt with folding chairs and a card table. The chief gave a short speech. The trainers gave a shorter one. There were sheet cakes from the grocery store. Duke sat next to Bradley the whole time, wearing his vest for the last time, ears up, tongue out, taking his own retirement with the good manners the trainers had once said set him apart from every other dog in his class. At the end of the ceremony, Bradley took the vest off. He folded it. He handed it to the chief. The chief took it, held it a second, and handed it back. He said, in a voice that carried across the parking lot, "This one you keep, Kessler. That's an order." Bradley took the vest back. He walked across the parking lot to Rachel, who was standing at the back with a small bouquet of grocery store daisies and eyes that had been trying not to spill over for the last 20 minutes. He handed her the leash. He said, "He's yours. As of this second, he's yours." Rachel took the leash. She looked down at Duke. Duke looked up at her. "He's ours," she said. Bradley did not argue. They drove home together in her truck this time, with Duke in the back seat and the vest folded on the console between them. On the way out of town, Bradley asked her if she would mind if he stopped at his apartment on the way to the farm, because there was something he had to pick up. She said no, she did not mind. He stopped. He went inside. He came out 5 minutes later with a small velvet box in his shirt pocket that he did not show her yet, and a duffel bag that had most of his clothes in it. And Rachel looked at the duffel bag and did not say anything. He proposed that night on the porch swing after supper. He did not have a speech. He said, "Rachel, I would like to marry you because I love you and because I do not want to spend another Sunday night driving back to that apartment, and because I think Duke would like it too." Rachel laughed. Rachel cried. Rachel said yes. Duke put his head across both of their laps and let out the long, slow, shuddering breath that he had been letting out on and off for 4 months. And this time he did not stop until he was asleep. The wedding was 6 months later. They kept it small. They had it at the farm. Marla from the diner made the cake. Sergeant Duplessis stood up as Bradley's best man. Rachel's cousin from Broken Arrow gave her away. There were 40 folding chairs set up in 2 rows in the front yard, and there was a rented arch with white flowers. And there was, at the head of the aisle, a 9-year-old shepherd with a grey muzzle and a small leather pouch tied to his vest, in which were tied 2 gold rings. Duke walked up the aisle by himself. Nobody led him, nobody called him. The music started, and he stood up from where he had been lying at the back, and he walked forward, slow and proud, between the 2 rows of folding chairs, past the seated guests, past Marla, who was crying, past Lonnie, who was pretending not to be, up to the arch where Bradley was already waiting, and Rachel had just been walked in to meet him. He stopped between them. He sat down. He looked up at Bradley, then at Rachel, then at Bradley again, and he waited. Bradley crouched down. He untied the pouch. He handed 1 ring to the officiant, and he kept the other in his palm. And when the vows were done, he slid it onto Rachel's finger and kissed her hand before he kissed her mouth, and Duke leaned his head against Bradley's leg and closed his eyes. Later, at the reception, when it was already dark and the string lights over the pasture were on, and everybody had eaten too much cake, Rachel found Bradley alone by the fence, looking out at the goats. She put her arm through his. She said, "You know the funny thing about all this? Tell me the funny thing." "The funny thing," she said, "is that I stopped believing in second chances the day I put his collar in the drawer. I truly did. I thought I'd used mine up. And then a radio went off at 3 in the morning in a patrol car 60 miles from my porch. And a dog heard my voice, and here we are." Bradley thought about that for a while. He watched the goats in the dark. He watched a shepherd with a grey muzzle lie on his side in the grass 20 feet away, eyes half closed, listening to the party. "He heard your voice for 7 years, Bradley said. He was just waiting for the radio to be close enough. Rachel pressed her forehead to his shoulder. "I love you," she said. "I love you," he said. "I love both of you." They stood there until the music from the porch changed to something slow, and then Rachel took him back to the yard, and they danced in the grass, under the string lights, with a 9-year-old shepherd asleep with his chin on the boot of the officer who had rescued him twice, once from a kennel outside Muskogee and once from a life without her. Duke lived another 6 years. He died the way old shepherds should die, on the porch, in the sun, with his head on the boot of the woman who had raised him and named him for the 2nd time. Bradley was in the kitchen when it happened, making coffee. Rachel called for him without shouting, in a voice that was somehow already at peace, and Bradley came out and sat down on the boards, next to the swing, and the 3 of them stayed there a long time. They buried him under the cottonwood at the far end of the pasture, where he had liked to lie when the sun was in the wrong place on the porch. Bradley made a small wooden marker with his own hands. Rachel painted the name on it in blue paint. It said, simply, Duke, because he had earned that. Because Buddy had been a puppy on a porch, and Duke had been a working dog with a soft heart, and both of those dogs had been the same dog, and both of them had come home. The radio in the patrol car back at the station in Bristow crackled that night at 3 in the morning, the way radios always crackle at 3 in the morning, and a young officer named Ellis, who had joined the department only 6 months earlier, keyed the mic to answer a hit-and-run report, and he did not know then, and would not know for a long time, that the whole reason he had a job on that shift was because of an older officer who had once heard a dog cry in the back seat of a patrol car at exactly the same hour, and had decided, without knowing why, to trust the dog before he trusted the paperwork. Some things Bradley would tell Ellis years later at the retirement party the department threw for him. Some things do not travel through the front door of a police station. Some things come in through the back seat wearing fur, and they change the whole shape of your life if you are lucky enough to listen when they whine. If this story moved you tonight, take a second to leave a comment about the dog in your own life who has heard something you could not. Hit the like button so more people find this channel, and subscribe so you never miss another true story of a good dog and the people who finally figured out how much they were loved.